Hello my friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and another set of Christmas cards. I'm using the Picket Studios Merry Christmas Friends stamp set and it's just adorable. This is another one that came out I think a couple months ago. Again, my sense of time is a mess, but I've had it sitting here and I couldn't decide on just what image to use. I had to use all of them. They're adorable, and there's coordinating wafer dies, so that's what's like shaking around the back of the package. And yeah, I stamped all of them out. I colored all of them with Copic markers, and then I did 6 Christmas cards in a very non-traditional style, kind of went mixed media, and just I had fun. I used, an oxide spray and my paper pouncers, and I did splattering and die cutting and like mixed media. It was fun. So this is part of my 2023 holiday card series. I will have a link at the end of the video to my playlist with all the videos I've done so far. There will be more coming. I am also the host of this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. That's also why I went very non-traditional with these colors, which is super fun. And for those that aren't aware, the Color Throwdown Challenge is just a weekly challenge just for fun. Anyone can play along. I will have a link to that in my blog post, which is linked directly below the video in the description box. So you can go check that out if you're interested. And yeah, like always, I'll have links to all the things that I used as well in the description box below. And keep watching and I will show you guys how I made these cards. So my first step in making all these cards was to stamp out all these little characters from the Merry Christmas Friends stamp set. And I am stamping them onto Simon Says Stamp's smooth white cardstock. And I've just got a piece of that lined up here in my MISTI stamping platform. And I'm getting all the images lined up, making sure they're spaced out enough so that I can die cut them when I'm done. And then once I've got them lined up, close the lid, pick up all those stamps, and then I'm going to ink them up and stamp them with Simon's Intense Black ink, which is just an alcohol marker friendly black ink. And I'm going to ink this up and stamp this a couple times to get all of the detail on all of these images. And seriously, are they not just the cutest little things ever? I love it. And these didn't have to be Christmas cards. There's a couple Christmas sentiments in here. They're sort of wearing winter gear, but even then, some of it's kind of just could be whatever. These could be any occasion cards. Like these little characters are just cute. Like these would be good for little birthday cards, little thinking of you, like anything, honestly. So right here, right now, this is real time. I'm going to super speed this up in editing though, to just save us all from having to sit through, and I don't have a whole lot to say. I kept my coloring very, very simple. Like I said in the intro, I just used my Copic markers this time to do the coloring. I used all the same markers to do their skin tones just to simplify the process. But again, you could totally mix this up and do different shades of markers to do different skin tones and really just have fun with it. Because these images, as I was coloring them, I was like, man, like I was just having fun. They're not too tiny that, sometimes it can be a little bit of a struggle. But they're also not super large that it's going to take forever to color them in. And especially if you only, wanted to do a couple at a time. But they're just like kind of the perfect little medium size. Perfect size for, A2 size cards. And perfect size to, have a little fun with the coloring. And yeah, I'm going to have to revisit this set again because I just think they're adorable. So I kind of went through, and once I started getting into, after I did their little bit of skin tones, I started doing, of course, all their little accessories and whatnot. And somewhat random color combos for some of the things. And then I get into like the actual colors for the color challenge. Because I did some sort of yellow golds for the hair and a few of the accessories because I decided I was like, oh, I'm going to put gold on these cards. Because I was like, I'll do some gold heat embossing, probably some gold splatter. So I'd pulled that in. And then kind of some red-brown colors for the hair and the little character there on the far left that has a little like fox hat and she's holding a little fox. Like, it's just cute. And then browns, of course. Pulled some of those in for, again, some hair tones. There's one's holding a little puppy dog. Their boots. And then I got into the actual like similar shades to the color throwdown challenge that I was, following along with because I am the host for this one. And ran into a couple snags when I was coloring this. A couple of my Copic markers were completely dried out. For those that aren't aware, I've been coloring with Copic markers for getting close to 20 years now. I forget exactly when I got into it, but it's been well over 15 years. Some of my Copics are actually close to 15 years old now. And I am very, very bad about not maintaining my markers. This is another 100% example of do as I say, not as I do. I always tell people, I was like, take care of your markers. Like, Copics are an investment. They are not cheap markers. They, keep an eye on them, refill them when needed, all the things. And do I follow my own advice? No. And then I discover in the middle of coloring, that I've got some dried out markers. So it's a good thing they're on sale right now at Simon Says Stamp. I was like, I'm going to have to replace a couple markers, probably get some more refills, things like that. And, start following my own advice and taking care of my markers because they are good markers, and they have lasted. Many of my markers, I can't say exactly for sure how long, but I've had them all for at least a decade now. So really worth it. Anyway, did a green kind of combo, a blue sort of combo, a peach sort of combo. And yeah, had a few little oopsies here and there along the way. That's where I use my zero like colorless blender to push that back into the cardstock. And then when I was done coloring, I took my one of my Tonic Nouveau Aqua Shimmer pens. This is the Midas Touch one, so it just adds a gold shimmer, and added that to little random areas on here. I will show at the end somewhat. I've been having a really hard time. My camera has just been like, yeah, no. When I'm trying to show you guys like the sparkle and all the amazing glittery bits of things. But yeah, they've got those just little glittery elements, that just, again, it's a subtle thing, but it's so fun. So I added that just randomly to all these little characters. Some have glittery boots, little glittery elements to their outfits, to their little hats, to their little stuffed animals, like all the things. So I did that first, and then I went in with my white gel pen and added just random little, again, dots, highlights, wherever. I wasn't following any sort of light source. I wasn't doing that with my coloring either. And just adding those little elements, it gives it that little extra something. And the white gel pen is always the last step, because if you add the white gel pen and then go over it with things like the Aqua Shimmer pen or glossy accents or anything like that, that will smear or fully dissolve white gel pen. It's just the nature of the product. So I always do the white gel pen as my last step. So after I had added it to all the little random areas that I wanted to add these to, all these little images were colored in and complete, and just, you could actually keep the cards like really clean out and just do like a slimline card and just have them all lined up. That would have looked really cute, like just kind of keeping them just as is. Like, how adorable. But I was in a mixed media mood, so that's what I went with. So once I was done all the coloring, I took the coordinating wafer dies, lined them all up with the images, and then I taped the wafer dies into place with just my little bits of washi tape. This just prevents these dies from moving when I run them through my die cut machine, so that they don't shift and like cut the images in half, anything like that. So I just go through, add little pieces of tape. And when I'm taping, I always tape the die and keep the tape to the outside. I try not to ever tape over the image, just to save myself the grief, because you're putting a lot of pressure, onto the cardstock, onto whatever tape you're using. It doesn't matter what brand. And sometimes the pressure will fuse that tape to your cardstock, and that's the last thing you want. So die cut everything, and then pulled out an oxide spray. This is saltwater taffy oxide spray. And I have panels of more Simon Smooth White cardstock. And this first panel was an experiment. I just sprayed the oxide spray. I knew I wanted sort of a drippy look because I was, going mixed media. But this one I kept mucking with, and I was literally using, you can see with the edge of my fingernail, to just kind of pull down the drips to really create a drippy look. But I wasn't happy with that one. I was like, no. I wasn't feeling it. But got in my groove, and then it just worked. I just kind of would spray a few times, tapped it just like so. And I have my splat box, like the tall end up. So, and that's why it kind of looks weird on camera, but it's so I can like spray like straight ahead at the cardstock there. And then some of it will drip down a little bit. So once I got my groove, like, okay, we're good to go. I'm just going to, prop up the cardstock, spray it a few times, go on to the next one. And I was just laying them out behind me because this dries fairly quickly. I did blast all these with my heat tool just to speed up the drying process, but it doesn't take too long. It just depends on how much you're spraying. But yeah, so that'll just create kind of this messy sort of background. And then I pulled out my big Waffle Flower grip mat. And I have the Picket Fence Studios Inner Glow A2 stencil. I've used this in other videos. And I've got the stencil and the cardstock, like the background, adhered to the grip mat, the stencil, and then I'm using Picket Fence Twinkle Lights Clear Paper Glaze Luxe. So it's just a glittery embossing paste. It's kind of white, sort of shimmery, and then it just has, like kind of iridescent glitter in it. It's super pretty, but also subtle. I was going to go with one of the more gold ones in the Picket Fence line, but I decided to go just a little more subtle because I knew I was going to have a lot of other things going on with these cards. So I just would put each card panel onto the grip mat, apply the paste over the stencil. Once I was done all of these backgrounds, I will then clean off my stencil, my palette knife, wipe off the mat, and it's good to go. So you just kind of apply it like you're applying icing, really. And I purposely did everything kind of off kilter, like not centered. The stencil does have the etch lines, so you can center it onto an A2 card front, but I wanted everything kind of off to the side. That was just, again, what was the plan in my head, along with all the other noise. And once I was done doing all of that stenciling, like I said, I cleaned everything off, set it all aside. And then I grabbed a piece of green cardstock. I think this is avocado. Pretty sure this is avocado cardstock from Concord 9th. And grabbed a piece of that. I used my anti-static powder tool on that. And I'm just going to stamp the little Merry Christmas sentiment. There's several sentiments in that Merry Christmas Friends set. And I went with Merry Christmas sentiment because these are Christmas cards. And I'm just going to ink up and stamp the sentiment multiple times with clear embossing ink. I'd used my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. I stamped the sentiment a couple extra times just because it was like, I'm here, I'm stamping it. The space is there just in case. And of course, if I hadn't have stamped a couple extra, I would have needed one or two extra because, I managed to mess things up. But I stamped extra and they all turned out perfect. Figures, but whatever. So I coated all of them with Simon's Detail Gold embossing powder, tapped off the excess, melted that with my heat tool, let that cool off camera, wiped off the excess anti-static powder, and then used the coordinating wafer die that's part of the die set to die cut all the sentiments. And then while those backgrounds were still drying, I die cut scraps of white cardstock using the Picket Fence Fanciful Feather die set. I used this in a previous video as well. And I just thought it would just give a little extra something to these cards. So I die cut it from white cardstock. And then I used one of my paper pouncers and I started with Concord 9th grapefruit ink. So just kind of a lighter peachy sort of ink. And I'm not applying it perfectly evenly on these feathers. Like I'm letting some areas be a little lighter, be a little darker, just to give it that little extra something. But also these inks do smooth out as they dry. But yeah, I just kind of pounced on the color, keeping it more concentrated towards like the base of each of these little die cut feathers. And then after I applied that color, I went in with Concord 9th Sorbet ink, which is just a deeper peachy shade. And this I kept, again, more towards like the base of each of these little feathers. And then the colors will blend together and they'll just be pretty. And this was really quick and easy. So I just pounced that on. Once I was done with that, I'm going to set all of these aside. And again, just wipe off my grip mat. You clean them just like you do regular like photopolymer stamps. So generally more often than not, I just wipe them off. And then when my grip mats get like absolutely like covered in filth, embossing paste and powders and all the things, I just wash them in the sink with gentle soap and water and they're good to go. So by this point I was like, I am going with the gold splatter. So I'm using the Picket Studios paper. It's called Paper Splatter Watercolor, and this is the liquid gold version. So you just got to shake it up, put it on your palette, and then I use my little fan brush and I splatter it. This stuff, I like it. It's pretty. It is more subtle. So for me, it's just going to depend on my mood when I use this. I want it a little more subtle. I know, shocking, but I'm going to have a lot going on these cards. So I didn't want to use the regular, my Gonzai Tombi, etc. for the splatter. I wanted it to be just a little more subtle. This one, it's when it catches the light. You can see it more. It's just pretty. And they've got other colors. They've got a pearly white one. That's actually what I was going to use on these cards, but I changed my mind and went with the gold. And then they've got other ones in just like solid colors. But this is my first time finally, I've had them sitting on my desk for literal weeks, and it was time to just try it out and use it. And I was like, ooh, pretty and shimmery and gold. What more can I ask for? So I just splattered that on all of these backgrounds, let that dry. While that was dry, I die cut some Concord 9th Tide Pool cardstock. This time I just used the solid color cardstock rather than just white and then pouncing the colors of ink over it. Because with the snowflakes, I just wanted them to be more simple, just a solid color, because I did a lot of die cutting for these cards too. So I die cut the Tide Pool cardstock with the Picket more winter snowflakes wafer dies, and had everything arranged. And as you can see so far, I do everything in batches, or as Tim Holtz calls it, he calls it compartmental making. And you just do all of the same thing at once. So, if you're not going to do a full card start to finish, just do a bunch of backgrounds, or do a bunch of die cutting, or, do some ink blending, just do something, And when I'm doing something like this, where I'm doing multiple cards and there's a lot of elements, I do everything at once. So I did all my stamping, of the characters at once. I did all the coloring in one batch. I did all the spraying of the backgrounds in one batch, and then that way it just makes a lot more sense, makes a bit less of a mess, and everything comes together better. So I did all my adhering to the card fronts all at once. And then I popped the little main characters and the sentiments on with little foam squares to give them a bit of dimension. I did all that at once. And then I had made all my card bases at once. And then I trimmed down just panels of thinner white cardstock to probably 4 inches by 5 1/4, just slightly smaller than the A2 cards. And those I'm stamping the little characters with that Concord and 9th Tide Pool ink. And I just used an acrylic block for this and stamped it because it was faster, because I had to, switch a different character for each panel of cardstock. So stamp that onto those white panels. These are going to go on the insides of my cards because I decided I was originally going to have my card bases be white, but then changed my mind and made the card bases from that same avocado cardstock that I used for the heat embossed sentiments for the front. So I then trimmed down the white panels so that I could stamp these little characters with this Tide Pool ink. And then I'm going to line up, after I'd stamped them all, I'm going to put these into my MISTI, and I'm taking another sentiment from that same stamp set, and I'm inking that up and stamping that with VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. And since it's the same sentiment in the same spot, this is where the MISTI just came in handy, because then I could just quickly stick in a panel, ink up the sentiment, close the lid, stamp, go on to the next one, get them all stamped, done. So did that for all the panels for the insides of the cards. So I've got all those stamped. And then my next step was to adhere all of these to the insides of the card bases. And for that, I just used some craft tacky glue. And then once I've got all of these panels adhered to the insides of the cards, I just had to make sure that each of the card front panels matched up with the insides, because I did a different character on each of the panels on the inside. So I'm going to match them up to the character I adhere on the front. So very simple, really. And even if you didn't match them up, they're so cute. It doesn't really matter. But I did actually remember this time. And I didn't end up, adhering my card fronts upside down, because I've done that so many times. It just gets ridiculous. So I generally make it a habit to, open the card before I adhere the card front. Because, you have to rip apart a few cards when you do that. So made sure I adhered them properly. And then as my final bit of embellishment, because of course I had matching embellishments, I had some confetti in colors that kind of went with the color combo. So I had some Trinity Stamps First Sprout confetti and Seafoam confetti. And like I always do, I did one card first, figured out the placement of everything, and then I just copied it on every other card because that just made the process go smoother. And I got everything adhered, and that finished off the cards. So like I said earlier, I turned on my flashlight to kind of show or try and show the little gold sparkle. Again, it's subtle because I didn't completely cover these images with it. But yeah, the insides of the little ears on her hat and her little bunny and her boots have a little bit of gold sparkle. There's that gold paper splatter. And then, yeah, all the little elements to make these really cute cards. And again, like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links below the video to my blog post. In the blog post will be a link to the Color Throwdown Challenge. I'll also have all the photos of the cards as well as picture links to all the supplies I use. So that'll be in the blog post linked directly below the video. And then I'll put all the supplies that I used linked directly below as well for anyone who is interested. And then at the very end of the video, at the end screen, I'll put my playlist with all the videos I've done so far for this year's 2023 holiday card series. So you guys can check that out if you are interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.